Hi there, Malcolm here. This is my second video and it's following up from my first video, which was the top 10 reads of 2017. This is the top worst reads of 2017. These are the books that really didn't do it for me. I understand that as disclaimers normally put here, these are books that didn't work for me personally. If you like them, that's great. Glad you enjoyed them. And this isn't a direct attack upon you. I just didn't get on with these books. So let us begin.
Number 10.
A lot of these books I don't actually own. I got them from the library, and so there is going to be some on the tablet. Apologies if the picture isn't quite right. I'm still working out how to best show these. So, to start off with, yes, the book I like the most out of the books I like the least is The Massacre of Mankind by Stephen Baxter. This is the official follow-up to The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. With this book, the Martians have another crack of invading Earth, having taken their inoculations this time. And there's more of them, there's new things, and the story is just as badly told as it was the first time around. I have read The War of the Worlds. It was, for its time, possibly something, but certainly lacking a lot nowadays. This book is written very much in the style of the original and is perhaps lacking a lot for it. Similar to The Time Ships, which is Stephen Baxter's follow-up to The Time Machine, again written in the same sort of style. Both books are overly long and neither add anything to the original at all. It's just something else that happens, and to be honest, I could have done without reading it. It didn't go anywhere. The story itself was okay. It rambled a bit. I didn't really get into the characters. It did have the narrator from the first book, who was a secondary character in it, but it followed somebody else. I think it's his ex-wife. But it really just rambles along. I took a long time reading it, and I could have done without it, to be honest.
Number 9.
Yeah, next up is The Midden by Tom Sharpe. This is supposedly a farce. Tom Sharpe, if you're not familiar with him, writes lots of outrageous, politically incorrect, farcical books, many of which are indeed very, very funny. This is one of his more recent books and, frankly, was lacking a lot. It spent a lot of time setting up many of the characters, even ones that just happened to be passing by at the time, perhaps, with some not very amusing anecdotes about their upbringing and various things. And by the time we got to the main thing that happens, I'd lost all will to actually enjoy it. The plot, when it finally surfaces, centres around a corrupt police officer who finds a drugged yuppie in his bed, beats him up, and then dumps the poor unfortunate on a neighbour to frame her. What follows is a series of events which are quite unlikely and not terribly funny, leading to a humongous conclusion which has already been done in the very hilarious Riotous Assembly, also by Tom Sharpe, which is basically the same farce in essence, but done so much better, so much funnier, and with much better characters and a much more hard-hitting social commentary. Whereas this one, it doesn't really say anything and the humour is flat.
Number 8.
Thanks. Next up is A Song of Ice and Fire, book number 5, A Feast for Crows by George R.R. Martin. I've never seen the show. I've heard great things about it. There's lots and lots and lots talking on about it, and I thought, well, let's try the books. So I've read them all so far. I'm still going through it. I'm on the next one at the moment, Dreams and Dust, I think it is. And I've got to say, it's going nowhere for me. It's slow, it's laborious, and the characters, none of them are likeable. You don't care about what's going on, and there is no end in sight. It's just a bunch of stuff that goes on and on and on. People die, people are horrible to each other, things happen, but nothing has any relevance to anything. And to be honest, if it wasn't the fact I wanted to complete the thing, I wouldn't have even bothered. This really was not worth it. The first book was actually okay. There's some nice characters in there, which of course they all bump off, and some really interesting scenes that happened in it. But by now, it's just a slog fest. I mean, George himself in the back writes about how much he found it a bitch to write these books. But to be honest, it's about as difficult reading the damn things. Not for me, really.
Number 7.
My next book is the first from this author, Alexander Freed, and it is Star Wars Rogue One. I quite enjoy reading novelisations of films. I often find, because they write these books in tandem with the script being written, that quite often what's in the book doesn't actually feature on the film because it's either ended up on the cutting room floor or because they decided to change the story at some point during the filmmaking process and they went a different direction. You get interesting insights in the motivations behind characters, their thoughts, and other background stuff you perhaps don't get on screen. I really enjoyed the film for a Disney Star Wars film, and I thought, well, I'll get the book when it comes out. I've read the other, at the time, 6 novelisations, and so out it came, grabbed it, and it added absolutely nothing to the story at all. This is literally what you see on screen. I mean, there are a few memos in there showing how he managed to manipulate things to get that little ventilation shaft in there, but for the most part, this is exactly what was on screen, and it only acted as a stopgap between seeing the film and waiting for it to come out on Blu-ray, where I could then watch it when I wanted to. It disappointed me or anything else. It read fine. The story is as good as a film. Like I say, it is pretty much the book of the film in that there is nothing more to it. But I wanted more. I was expecting a little bit more, a little bit insight about what they were thinking about this particular moment, or certain flashbacks, or little extra bits. Completely nugget free.
Number 6.
Next up is the first of the 2 Goosebumps books on this list. This one is Be Careful What You Wish For. I've been going through the Goosebumps collection that we've got in the house, and I found that actually a lot of them are quite enjoyable. I started off with the very first one, which is Welcome to Dead House, which I found was a very thrilling story. Okay, you know, it's a Goosebumps, it's only goes to a certain level, but I did find this one decently creepy and decently intriguing, and I pretty much enjoyed it. And so I ploughed on with the rest of the series. A lot of these are rereads, but one that was a new one for me was Be Careful What You Wish For. The plot follows this girl who finds herself being able to be granted wishes, and the wishes go badly, as expected in these sort of stories. Unfortunately for me, I found the wishes that she picked were bloody stupid. We've all seen various shows where they've got the wishing episode in them, and we've all seen how they can be backfired, but the fact that they were pretty stupid in the first place, I was not committed to this book. I found that it was a lost opportunity. There could have been some really good things that R.S. Stein could have gone for, but he picked what he picked, and it really lacked because of it.
Number 5.
Next up is Star Wars Knight Errant Aflame. I picked up Star Wars Deluge a couple of years ago, and I was going to read book 1 before I read book 2, so it just sat on my shelf for a while. I finally got my hands on book 1, and I read it, and I found that the plot was completely bamboozling. I couldn't actually tell you what it was about. None of the characters worked for me, and I found the artwork atrocious. And for some reason, Phil was some really unflattering point of view angles showing a lot of nostrils. The illustrator must have really liked their nostrils in this book, because there are so many shots of nostrils in this. And aside from the nostrils, I couldn't tell you what this book is about, and I didn't enjoy it at all. However, I did read book 2, Deluge, which I found a much better story, really well illustrated, and not affected by the first book at all. So I really wish I hadn't waited and read the first book, because it added nothing to book 2, and book 2, just start with book 2, don't bother with book 1.
Number 4.
Another Star Wars graphic novel. This one's written by Alexander Freed. This is The Old Republic, Blood of the Empire. I've read 3 of the Old Republic novels, which I've enjoyed. These are all based on the multiplayer online computer game. I've not played it. I'm not prepared to spend a monthly subscription on a game, but it's done quite well for itself. And anyway, so you got some stories based on the that universe, and I picked up this one. The plot follows a fresh-faced Sith who's on assignment to find and kill a fellow Sith who has betrayed the Empire. The artwork's pretty good, the characters are interesting, but the whole thing just completely falls apart, goes nowhere, and you just think at the end of it, well, that was a waste of time. I really did not like the main character. Okay, yes, he's a Sith, you're not supposed to like him, but there's, you know, he wasn't even a good anti-hero. And the other Sith character was intriguing, but like I say, nothing really came of that. And the only other main character was the Sith Lord's Abyssin slave, who just came across as some sort of dumb ogre and was portrayed like that. And again, didn't really go anywhere with it. A disappointment all round.
Number 3.
Next up is the second Goosebumps book. This one is You Can't Scare Me, which is the second book in this compilation here. The plot basically follows a bunch of delinquent children who want to try and scare one of their classmates who is very well liked and tries very hard at work and is understandably in a very good and strong position for the rest of her life. And of course they want to ruin that by scaring her. So they do various illegal and outrageous activities in view of scaring this poor girl. And for every single one of their plots to backfire stupidly. I didn't like this one. I found that the characters were ridiculously idiotic and they deserved everything that came to them. It was also one of the weaker Goosebumps books in that there was no paranormal activity in this one. There was nothing supernatural. There's nothing ghostly. You know, these are supposed to be spine jingling for younger readers. There was nothing spine jingling in this at all. Just stupid.
Number 2.
Yep, number 2 on my worst read list is Anita Blake, Guilty Pleasures. Now, my wife read this about 10 years ago and she really enjoyed it. She enjoyed the second one. I think she read the third one as well. And we thought to try it again. So I read this to her over the course of about a month. And she really couldn't think what it was that she liked about this book. I had high expectations of this one due to what she's been saying about it and found it dismal. I had read a short story previously based on this universe. And I found it was quite intriguing. So I thought I'd give this story a go, which was the main motivation why I tried it. But I found as a world-building book, the intro and the first few chapters of this just were unbelievably bad. The whole thing started off in some sort of strip joint for vampires, and I had nothing invested in it whatsoever. I didn't like the main character. I didn't like any of the other characters. And by the time the thing finished, I was just glad it was over with. I have no inclination to try the next one, and my wife has actually since donated the entire collection of these books. So that's how well it went down.
Number 1.
Yep, number 1, the worst book I read last year was Romeo Spikes by Joanne Ray. The blurb on this advertised as a kind of a Buffy the Vampire Slayer for the modern age. And it looked intriguing. There were some demons that were making people commit suicide and they would live off the life of those victims, pretty much like the weeping angels from Doctor Who. Instead, it was a series of introducing characters, telling all about them and then killing them, and then introducing more characters, telling all about them and killing them. And this went over and over and over, and you're just thinking, why should I care about any of this? Everybody I try and get invested in just dies. You know, and there's no even reference to them having been dead. And then some other people pop up who are supposedly the main characters, the Buffy type character and the big bad, but by this point I'd stopped caring. The train scene near the end was pretty exciting, although I had nothing invested in any of it. And by the time the book finished, I was thinking, well, that set up nothing. Why is there a book 2? I don't have anything invested in this. I borrowed this one from the library. And this was the nearest thing to a DNF that I was going to have last year. I was determined to finish it. I was thinking, no, it's going to pick up. It's going to pick up. It's going to pick up. Another 50 pages. It's going to get there. Another 50 pages. Going to get there. Nearly at the end now. It didn't. I say the train scene's probably the only thing going for it. But even then, too much time had been wasted. I wished I'd had done this as a DNF. I did finish it. I was determined to do it. But was it worth it? No. And those were the 10 books I liked the least last year. Once again, I'd like to remind you this is an attack on those who liked these books. If you like them, great, you're allowed to like them. Good for you. I didn't. If you also didn't like these books, I'd like to hear why you didn't like them. And if you have anything unpleasant to say, keep them to yourself. Thank you. See you next time.